You know the image, right? A slightly crazy old man charging at a windmill. For 400 years, that's been the popular take on Don Quixote. But the real power of this book isn't about madness. It's about what happens, the profound, the tragic, and yeah, the hilarious collision when a person's inner vision becomes more real to them than reality itself. This is way more than just some dusty old book. It's a timeless look at the gap between the world as it is and the world we believe it ought to be. The entire novel, and I mean the whole thing, really spins on this single, powerful question. Miguel de Cervantes isn't just taking us on some adventure across Spain. He's pulling us into a deep dive on human psychology. He's forcing us to ask, where's the line between delusion and conviction? And is it possible that the stories we tell ourselves are actually the most real things we have?
And this, right here, illustrates that central conflict perfectly. On one side, you have Don Quixote's perception, which is completely built from all the fantasy novels he's devoured. For him, a windmill isn't a windmill, it's a giant. A flock of sheep isn't just sheep, it's a massive army. A regular old inn is an enchanted castle. And on the other side, well, there's the boring, everyday reality that everyone else sees. The entire story lives and breathes in that space between these two columns.
Yeah, we all know the image, the lanky, absurd-looking guy charging at a windmill. It's become this universal symbol for fighting battles you just can't win. But if you stop there, you're honestly missing the whole point. To really understand the man, we have to understand how he got to that windmill in the first place.
So let's back up. Before he was Don Quixote, he was just a country gentleman named Alonso Quijano, and he reads a lot. So many books about knights and giants and damsels in distress that his mind just gets completely waterlogged with their world. He doesn't just enjoy these stories, he becomes convinced the real world needs their heroism. So he just creates a new identity. He becomes Don Quixote de la Mancha, knight-errant, and rides out to force his fictional rulebook onto a very real world.
And this is where we need to shift our thinking. It's really easy to just write Quixote off as insane, but Cervantes is inviting us to ask a much more interesting question. What's the real difference between madness and just an unbreakable commitment to your ideals? Quixote's conviction is so powerful that it literally reshapes his reality. And as we're about to see, it starts to reshape the reality of everyone around him too.
To really get this, we have to meet the other main character. The story doesn't truly kick off until Quixote recruits his neighbor, a simple farmer named Sancho Panza, to be his squire. And together, these two guys represent two fundamental, competing parts of the human spirit.
First, you've got Don Quixote. He is pure, uncut idealism. He runs on big, abstract principles. Honor, justice, chivalry. His whole mission is to serve a higher purpose, protect the innocent, punish the wicked. He's living entirely in the world of what should be. You could say he's the soul, always reaching for the sky.
And then you've got Sancho Panza. He is pure realism. He is worried about his stomach, getting paid, being comfortable, and whether his donkey is doing okay. While Quixote is scanning the horizon for his next noble adventure, Sancho is looking at the path in front of them, trying to make sure they don't trip. He is the body planted firmly on the earth.
So these two characters give us this incredible framework, not just for the story, but for ourselves. The whole novel becomes this dialogue between two forces, the quixotic and the panzaic, the dream versus the reality. And the absolute genius of Cervantes is showing us that none of us are just one or the other. We're all in a constant, lifelong negotiation between the two. Now, here's where the book gets really brilliant. It's not just watching Quixote try to force his fantasy onto the world, it's watching the world, through Sancho, actually start to play along with that fantasy. For a huge chunk of the first part of the book, Sancho is the voice of reason. You know, he's the guy constantly pointing out, "Sir, that's a windmill." But then something shifts. He starts to realize that if he wants to get what he was promised, to be the governor of his own island, he has to stop fighting his master's reality and start working within it. He has to learn to speak Quixote's language.
This scene changes everything. Quixote needs proof of his imagined love, Dulcinea, and Sancho finds himself in a tight spot. So what does he do? He improvises. He grabs the first peasant girl he sees and presents her as the beautiful Dulcinea, claiming that evil magicians have cast a spell to make her look like a farmhand. And here's the genius part. Sancho, the ultimate realist, uses his master's own delusional framework to solve a very practical problem. He starts to quixotize, and in that moment, the line between their two worlds just starts to melt away.
And as they keep going on their journey, you see this amazing transformation get even deeper. Quixote, getting beaten up by reality over and over, starts to show these little flashes of pragmatism. He starts to Sanchify. And at the same time, Sancho, almost in spite of himself, starts to develop a real affection for his master and for the whole crazy adventure. The realist actually starts to see that there's some value, some nobility in the dream.
So, why are we still talking about this book 400 years later? Why is it so important? Well, because in telling this one story, Cervantes basically stumbled upon the blueprint for every modern novel that came after.
Before Don Quixote, stories were mostly about epic heroes with fixed destinies. Cervantes just blew all that up. He gave us characters who were complicated, who had messy internal lives, who actually changed over time. He even played with the idea of storytelling itself, pretending the book was just a translation of some other guy's work. He showed us that the same moment can be both hilarious and absolutely heartbreaking. But most importantly, he showed that our identity isn't some fixed thing. It's a story we build for ourselves.
But this is more than just a literary history lesson. The book actually gives us some really powerful mental models for how to navigate our own lives.
The Quixotic principle shows us the power of having a strong internal vision. Quixote acts based on his code of honor, no matter what the consequences are. And while, his application is a little absurd, the model itself is pretty powerful. Use your values as a filter to decide your actions, instead of just letting your circumstances decide for you.
Of course, you need a counterbalance. And that's the panzaic principle, the realism anchor. Sancho is constantly reminding Quixote and us that you still need to eat, you need to rest, you need common sense. A grand vision that isn't grounded in reality is just a hallucination. The realism anchor makes sure our ideals don't lead us right off a cliff.
So the ultimate wisdom of the book isn't to choose one or the other. It's not about being Quixote or being Sancho. It's recognizing that a full life needs both. We need that visionary idealism that pushes us to be better, and we need that pragmatic realism that helps us survive the trip. True wisdom isn't found in picking a side, it's found in the constant conversation between the two.
And all of this brings us right back to that central theme. Don Quixote isn't really a book about a knight, it's a book about the nature of identity itself. At the end of it all, Cervantes leaves us with this really haunting question. Yes, Don Quixote is comical, he's definitely deluded, but there's also something deeply noble about him. He insists on seeing virtue and honor and beauty in a world that, let's be honest, often doesn't have much of any of them. In a way, his madness is a form of integrity. It's a refusal to accept a flawed reality. And that right there is the enduring legacy of Don Quixote. It reminds us that the most powerful force in our lives might not be objective reality. It might just be the story we choose to believe about that reality, and about our own part in it.